listening to Uncommon Thinking, a podcast from Advertising Week. Uncommon Thinking features thought-provoking ideas directly from the stages of Advertising Week's global events. Hear from the brightest minds and thought leaders from every corner of the industry as they come together to help you navigate what's next. If you enjoy Uncommon Thinking, please consider subscribing on your podcast platform of choice, leaving a positive review, and sharing with friends and colleagues. Thanks for listening.
As consumer behavior shifts, Google is offering new ways to search. Marketers can benefit from these new tools with the right methods. In this episode of Uncommon Thinking, recorded at Advertising Week Europe 2025 and presented by PrimeAudience, we'll explore how AI-powered search can be a powerful tool in marketing, and how companies like Dell are capitalizing on these new features.
Hi, I am Vanessa King-Ori. I am Google's Managing Director of Technology, Media and Telecoms, and I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about all of the innovations that are happening in search. I am relatively new face at Google. I've spent my last circa year and a half learning a huge amount, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed learning about, no great surprise, is all of the innovations that are happening in technology at the moment, from driverless cars over in the States to Google DeepMind's Nobel Peace Prize winning innovations that are powering medical advancements. It's a really exciting moment. And what I think is really relevant for us in this room today is that those innovations are actually driving the advancement in search. In fact, one of the reasons that Google invested so deeply in AI decades ago was actually in order to keep improving search. So it's kind of an interesting story for today. Search has become indispensable. I mean, that feels like a sort of no-brainer, right? But we see more than 15 trillion searches a year on Google. And that number just seems kind of insane. But when you really break it down, it gets even more interesting. 15% of the searches that we see each day are brand new. And that number's remained the same for about a decade. And what I think is really interesting and a great opportunity is that there are still so many questions that have never been searched yet. One of the things that we all know very deeply is that we are in the midst of a really huge transformation in the way that consumers are behaving, and search is still. I've lost my way. Sorry. And we're going to talk about how AI is expanding to shift to that. So how we can make it more natural, more visual, and more personal, which I think is so important to us. What that means for brands and marketers will be key to the conversation today. And search is no longer limited to text in the text bar. Now you can use your voice, you can use your camera, and you can even circle on the screen. In fact, I did that today, walking around Adweek and just looking up my favorite outfits, to be honest. So in terms of the transformation in behavior that we're seeing, consumers are shifting how they operate. Now, consumers are streaming, they're scrolling, they're searching, and they're shopping, sometimes simultaneously and interchangeably. And these innovations are helping us expand the way we look at search, and AI is really powering a lot of that. The innovations that we're making are helping us capture even more searches and even longer signals of intent. And then we use this to connect highly qualified users with the best and most helpful ads. It's good news for you as marketeers, and it doesn't really get more important than this. And what I think is really important is that these innovations really, really work. We found that marketeers who've leaned into this technology and done the work to integrate AI into the way that they work are seeing a 60% higher growth in their revenues. And they are adapting to those new consumer behaviors about twice as fast as their peers. So this is a super useful discussion to help us in this discussion about where the innovations in search are going. We are very lucky to welcome Ola Novak from Google, and she is our Director of Search Marketing. Come on, Ola.
Mm-hmm. Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here and talk to you about search.
Yeah, it's really special to have Ola here. She is one of our czars inside Google and does this very professionally, but very selectively. So we're lucky to have you. I wanted to start, Ola, with AI overviews because there's so much discussion about that. And one of those discussions is Sundar, who said that AI overviews is one of the most significant improvements in search of the last 2 decades. So can you tell us a little bit more about it and why it's such an important innovation, particularly for the audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me start by saying, so I've been at Google for 15 years.
Yes.
Like, I'm not one of those old faces that have seen it all happen, old new face, hopefully, that I have seen it all happen. And what we've seen is every big technological shift also created change for search. It was the case with mobile, where we started looking at how we can search more locally, how we find places near us that are more relevant for us. And now it's the same with AI, right? So AI is unlocking new opportunities and new things for search. And I think what you were saying before, right? It's all about human curiosity and what people want to learn about and what people want to find. Never changes, always changes, never stops. Those 15% of searches that are new every day, that's a striking statistic. And then if you think about AI, this is what's most exciting, right? AI helps us allow people to ask new types of questions in new ways and get new types of answers. And that's really what AI Overviews is about. We all say search used to be the 10 blue links. It's very far from the 10 blue links now.
Yes.
It's images, it's videos, it's the knowledge graph, and now it's also the AI-powered AI Overviews, so what we do is we use a custom version of our Gemini model, we connect that with our search systems, and that's how we provide users with a snapshot of information that can allow them to get a quick overview of the topic, but then with links to dig deeper and find out more. And I think the image that we're sharing here on the screen is a good example of that, right? Like how it looks in practice. One example that I use, so we have been renovating our house for a really long time. If anyone has been through this process, it's a very hard process. We got to the garden finally. And so I've been trying to discover very quickly. I'm very bad at plants. I have no idea about them. But I was like, okay, we need to plant some flowers, and what do we do? So if I wanted to search when do I plant daffodils, right? That's when I can get AI Overviews to quickly tell me the most important information, some tips for planting flowers. Not now, by the way, it's too late. You have to do it in Q4.
Something already.
Yeah. But then also links, right? Like if I want to find out more, there are links to go deeper into lots of different websites. So that's really helpful, and that's like letting me search more easily, more effortlessly, ask questions that maybe I didn't think search would give me an answer to, or maybe questions that require a range of sources to get the information.
I think this is like a cyclical relationship, right? Because we've talked about how these new innovations and extensions to search are in response to consumer behavior changing. But I think what's interesting at point of discussion is also how are consumers behaving differently around search with AI overviews, and how is this impacting kind of the way that results are being shown?
Yeah, and look, I think we all learned to search with text, right? I think we've all learned we have a question and then we think, what's the query we use for that question? And I remember learning you add a plus or you add quotation marks, and like we got taught to how to use that text search box. And I think AI Overviews is one example of like how we no longer have to think that way, right? Like we can ask questions that are more complex, that are longer. And I think this is where, like, us as users, this will be something that, we're all learning as we go, how this technology can help us. This is one of the things that my team is looking at as well, right? Like, how do we educate our users about what's possible now with search? So AI Overviews is now live in more than 100 countries. Just a couple of weeks ago, we launched the next wave of countries here in EMEA. which is really exciting to see how we can expand it. AI Overviews is reaching 1 billion global users every month. So, I mean, at the scale of search, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then what we see is people who use AI Overviews, they search more and they're more satisfied with their search results. And that's really something that we really care about anytime we roll out any innovation in search. Like that, those are the important things that we follow. And then I think the other thing to mention here is the feedback is particularly good from younger users, right? They find this helpful, they're satisfied, and they're also searching more. So that's another one.
Great. And let's talk a little bit about sort of visual search. I'm a very visual person. I'm particularly excited about this. And I mentioned, earlier, I think it's increasingly common for people to search in this way. How has Google search evolved to meet that kind of growing and shifting demand?
Yeah, so I think that's also powered by AI, but it was even before it came to be, even before AI Overviews. So I think another great example of not being constrained to the text in the search box and being able to ask new types of questions that we didn't think are that easy. Like, we don't even know what query to type, right? That's where image search is really, really helpful. I have 2 kids, they're 9 and 12, and they learned to use voice search before they learned to type. Like, they figured out very quickly, like, they don't need to spell. They can just ask whatever they want to ask and get the results. So, to them, it comes super, super naturally. For me, I had to learn to use it. But I think once you do, like what you said about the outfits, right? Yeah. Like, once you realize, like, oh, I can do that, it's incredible. So again, our renovation was a big part of my purchase journey over the past 12 months. So
if you go back, you can't go back.
No, you can't go back. So I've been like walking around, like I go into a hotel and I'm like, I like this chair in the lobby. I snap a photo, I look it up like very quickly. I can see, oh, it's really expensive. Maybe I don't like it that much. Or it's actually fine and I can buy it easily, and it's not like an antique something. So that's been amazing. I love Circle to Search. So if you have an Android phone, I highly recommend you try Circle to Search, because you can then search in any app, right? Like, you can be online. So again, I consumed so much interior design content that I couldn't take it anymore. But then every time something sparked my interest, I circle and I'm immediately in search, right? And I can check what it is. You no longer have those moments where like you're wondering, what is that person wearing, and so on and so forth. So that's really, really powerful. It's not just me and my kids and you, Vanessa, right?
Yes, yeah.
I think what we're seeing is that this is one of the fastest growing ways to search. 20 billion visual searches every month happening on Google. And then I think what for all of you is really important is 1 in 4 are commercial in nature. So 1 in 4 is like me thinking about buying that chair, or you probably thinking about some of the outfits.
Shoes or a bag.
Yeah.
But same. Usually too expensive. I guess finally, what do these innovation mean for the kind of purchase journey? That's what's really important. We touched on that a little bit, but I wonder if you could go a bit deeper.
Yes. So look, I think we saw the video at the start, right? The way consumers discover now is just, I think we say, predictably unpredictable now at Google, but it's very hard, to follow them and to figure out what they will do. But what we do know is that still, we're very privileged to be able to say Google is the number 1 touch point that helps them make smart and informed decisions, right? And this is what matters. And then AI unlocks 2 key things in search for me as a marketeer and for search overall, right? The number 1 is what I've been saying all along: new ways to ask questions that you maybe wouldn't have asked otherwise, but also questions that make that connection between discovery and decision like much quicker, right? If I can snap a photo and like go to shopping immediately after I saw it, that's like a completely different journey to then, remembering that I like the shoes 2 weeks later when I'm shopping somewhere.
2 weeks? That's okay.
So that's, I think, the first part, right? Like new types of questions with AI overviews, like complex questions, longer questions that don't have like one single answer, but maybe need a range of sources. And then I think the second thing is, for us, it helps us understand intent much better. And so, again, for me as a marketer, that's critical, right? Like knowing who needs what and like when they need it, and like that this person might be interested in my product or my brand, like that's incredible. So helping us understand intent better, helping us as a company give better ads to users at the right moment with the right message. That's the other thing that's really powerful. And we're all always thinking like how to reach our users. I will maybe also note that especially for younger users, search is really, really key. And we see that they search more than any other age group. Like if we look at signed-in users ages 18 to 24, their searches per day are higher than for other age groups. And so these innovations, these ways to search is like one of the reasons that they're able to do that powers that.
It was amazing. And they have more time. That's it.
Maybe they have more time than us. Yeah. But, this is just, it's not the end. It's just the beginning, right? So I'm really excited to see what more happens in the world. I think it's also, for somebody who works in marketing, such a key moment to try and keep up with the pace of innovation, keep learning. That's also like a big part of what we need to be doing.
I think that's a really good point, because it was so interesting. At the end of 24, we did this 24 recap on the innovations across the year. And that was, my first key year. And the list was so long. So when we touch base again in a year's time or so, we will see a huge amount of innovation. The message is really, we just will need to keep having these conversations and learning and adapting. So we've heard about how search is adapting, and what about on the campaign side? So now let's hear from someone who's proving just what new AI-powered features can do for marketeers. I'd like to welcome Simon Robinson. Come up, Simon. Simon is from Dell, and he is going to talk about how they're investing in search to drive ROI and reach audiences in some fascinating ways. I'm very lucky. My team and I work with Simon, and Simon is the global head of performance marketing for Dell, and so very well placed to talk to us about some of this. Welcome up, Simon.
Thank you.
So let's dive straight in. Dell has invested heavily in search globally compared to other tech brands. And can you share some insights into why and the thinking behind that? I mean, got to go away.
So I think there's probably two main drivers of why search is so important for Dell. And the first one is just the diversity of what we sell, right? Like we might have one customer that's spending $1 billion on a load of servers. We might have another customer who's buying a mouse. Right. So what you have is a huge variety of different purchase journeys, need states, and obviously search is quite a key part of that, right, in terms of allowing those people to get to the information they need. But I think the other one that's also particularly big for Dell is what we call our direct model. Now, what that means is we want to sell products ourselves. Right. So what you have is a lot of tech brands who majority of their business will be through a reseller. Right. So a retailer, an Amazon, or things of that kind of nature. Now, we work with those guys, let me be clear, and they're very important relationships to us. But Dell have always been focused on selling direct to consumers. Right. So that's a challenge for us because we have two pots of competitors here. You have the manufacturers, but you actually have the retailers. Right. So we enter into this world where, like, often a thing people say about search is if people are searching for your brand, the job's done. Right. Like, let them find their own way. That doesn't work for us because people can very easily find their way to Best Buy or to Amazon. Right. And if we actually want to capture that sale on Dell.com, which is a priority for us, that actually expands the amount of search that we need to be focused on. So like brand advertising, if we've got competitors in the auction, that's a challenge for us, right? So those two things in combination make search just a really key facilitator for our customers to discover about our products, but also buy them.
And we've just been talking about how search has been changing and pretty rapidly, right? So I'm interested in how your approach and Dell's approach have adapted in recent years, either in response to the changes that people like Google are making or it's for consumer behavior. Yeah.
Right. So we've definitely been on a journey with search over the last few years, and obviously in partnership with you guys. And so it's kind of come by stage in terms of how we've got to more of like kind of a best practice approach and how we execute now. Now, weirdly enough, the first step was probably actually talent, right? We didn't talk about that before, but it's like I got hired into Dell about 4 years ago, guys. I'm an ex-agency person. I spent 20 years, Mediacom, Omnicom, across various different agencies. Last 5 at Mediacom working on Dell. So I made the transition across, and it became very clear to me very quickly that we needed to be amazing at search, right? Like it's just no option for us in terms of that. So one of the first hires I did was actually get a search specialist come in and work for Dell, right? Someone with agency experience. I've worked with them at MediaCom previously, so sorry, MediaCom, if there's any people in the room there. But bringing that in, because what you have is this challenge of going from agency expertise to actually making it happen within a client organization is not easy. Right? And bridging the gap through the marketing team, through to the people who are actually making decisions and managing this stuff, really a problem. So that was the first step, okay? The second step was what we called account consolidation. So Dell used to have multiple websites, actually conflicting search programs, right? Like we literally were bidding on the same terms, driving to different websites as part of Dell, which is obviously not optimal at all. So we actually merged all the websites together, and we took this as an opportunity to actually totally reinvent our search program, right? Like this was driven by the current CMO. She gave us 3 months. She said, get this sorted out, right? And so what we're actually able to do is totally audit all of the account structures that we had globally, right? And that ties directly into AI, right? If you have a search program which is siloed, and it's got this bit here and this business unit and these different things, what you're effectively doing is creating silos for the AI, right? It can only make decisions within that little pot of data that you're giving it. So what we did is to totally re-examine everything and actually open it up as much as we possibly could, right? So they would probably be the two major changes. Now, like we have a very effective search program. We saw very tangible results when we made that change. Like it was double-digit revenue growth for less spend, right? Just in terms of the amount of efficiency we're able to drive. So they're probably the main things that have got us to the point we're at now.
I think that's so fascinating because when we're speaking to the different companies and brands, everyone thinks that that's unique to them, those pain points internally that you need to kind of smooth through in order for these AI-driven technologies to work is really important in the effectiveness, right? Adoption of the tools is not the be-all and end-all if you're not organized, and quite hard work to organize correctly. But then we've seen that sort of 60% uplift in revenue. It's worth it. Did you agree?
Exactly.
I don't know what your uplift in revenues are off by heart, but I know it's been very worthwhile, right? So that's in terms of how you've adapted to our offering. What about the consumer behavior shift side of things? How has that sort of changed the way that you work or influenced how you're shifting? Yeah.
So that's always something we are looking at in terms of how people shop and how people discover different things. I think there's an interesting piece about kind of where search sits in the purchase journey and kind of whether or not it's moving further up in terms of that research phase. I think that's certainly the case with AI. But I'll be honest with you, the majority of the time I spend is actually on internal stakeholder management, right? It is getting people who are sales leaders who don't really understand the technology and don't understand the best practice, but they are very obsessed on the money, right? And I think that's one of the challenges you have with search, right? Is because it's a facilitator of purchase, you see big numbers against it, particularly if you're looking at last touch attribution, right? And let me be clear, guys, attribution is not an area of knowledge that a lot of sales leaders have a load of experience within, right? So a large part of what my job is now is actually bridging that gap between the experts, right? Google, our own internal experts, Essence Mediacom, our agency, and actually implementing and making real the recommendations you guys are giving us, right? Like I just have one tangible example, which is forecasting. Right. As a company, we like to decide when we think the money is going to come in. Oh, we've got an awesome sale. We're going to make loads of money. If the market demand's not there, we don't. Right. We miss the numbers and it just creates spiraling negative behaviors. So that education piece, those sorts of things, they're the things that are going to make the biggest difference for Dell Search Program moving forwards, is really just opening it up to do it right. And it's not an easy task in many cases.
And that shift to being demand led and so on, that's a lot of internal stakeholder management for sure. Yeah, that tends to surprise people how much it is, but it's worth it. I'm curious for both of you actually in what you're excited about in terms of the future of search. I mean, Simon, particularly, I guess, in how you work with us at Google and more generally, and then Ola, in terms of your work from the other side and the marketing inside of Google. So Simon, do you want to kind of...
Yeah, I think it's really data utilization in the most intelligent way possible. Like, that's our biggest focus, right? I've just got two quick examples. One is bidding to profit versus bidding to revenue, right? That's something we're looking at currently. Obviously, we make loads of margin on some products. We make very little margin on others. Revenue doesn't really capture that to some degree. So that's a big focus for us. And then the second one is what we call in-quarter buyer propensity, which is we have a lot of internal modeling and data on customers in terms of where they are in their purchase cycle, particularly for B2B, where they're not like pushing a button necessarily and buying stuff. We are being able to plug that modeling output into search, right? So we can then model off those prospects in order to improve our performance.
I think in our case, I mean, we are, as a marketing org within Google, we're heavy users of our ads products. And I think our ambition is to be at the forefront of testing and trying and deploying and making the most of them. I think, we always don't want to be in that meeting when somebody says, look, customers are doing this, you're not doing it yet. So I think absolutely that's the big focus now, like always pushing our internal media teams and then working with our agencies to figure out like how we can test and learn and trial the best of AI solutions and see how they work and make them work for us. So yeah, I think that learning aspect is a big one for AI and everything related to AI.
I think it's always really fascinating to me that the marketeers we work with sometimes are so curious about how Google is using our own tools from a marketing perspective. And the truth is we're on a quite similar journey, slightly ahead, but it's a very similar journey. So I'm going to wrap there for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found this conversation really useful and insightful. I think one of the things I would love for you to take away from today is to think about the whole consumer journey from initial discovery all the way to final decision. It's changing, it's shifting, but we are developing these incredible tools through Google that make your jobs as marketeers or as agency planners and buyers easier and better, and to help deliver the best ROI. So it's an exciting space for search, and we're all going to have to do a lot of work to keep up with the innovations. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Uncommon Thinking. For more podcasts like this one, including AW360, Advertising Week's longest-running podcast series, now in its 11th year, head over to www.advertisingweek.com/podcasts or search Advertising Week on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening.